The entire book of Job. Nothing is more predictable than sitting under a sermon on Job, where the preacher mocks the friends of Job. Guest speakers love this book as they point out how wrong Job's friends were to accuse him of wrongdoing. Although it's seldom pointed out that these friends came to Job in his time of grief. Where is the spirit of house calls to friends in need these days? And they had the decency to keep their mouths shut for a whole week as they sat there and kept him company. Let's see your guest speaker do that. Of course, this is just warming up the engines as we cruise by multiple subjects in Job. After successfully calling a unicorn a mere ox, the embarrassed scholars of today rely heavily on the footnotes to help deflect many questions that arise in Job chapter 40. Remember the motto, avoid controversy and pass the offering plate. Since it's well known that controversial subjects might affect the pocketbook, a strange chorus arises from all directions to save one from getting too deep in Bible studies. This chorus goes something like this. They'll say, let's not talk about controversial subjects and get back to loving this world for Jesus. Or some such phrase full of flowers and scented candles. And we are sharply rebuked for studying the whole Bible with stern lectures on remaining focused and sticking with John 3:16 or Romans 8:28. Why, bless my soul, don't you know that we need unity in times like these? This is another statement I hear from Christian brethren, but it could just as easily have been said by Nimrod as they broke ground for the new Community Fellowship Center. I have a peculiar habit of wanting the entire Bible, not just a percentage of nice verses that avoid controversial subjects. My Bible says, he moveth his tail like a cedar. One of the major problems with calling the behemoth a hippo or an elephant is it makes God kind of clueless about animals. But it's the Bible correcting crowd that are clueless about animals. Hippos and elephants do not have tails that move like cedar trees. And sadly, many people that have a study Bible with a commentary believe the footnotes more than the biblical text itself. Surely a book calling itself a study Bible being sold in a store that claims to be Christian couldn't possibly be wrong, right? But to look around and see what possible animal could this be. That kind of study opens you up to ridicule. And remember, ridicule must be avoided at all costs according to the proud and dedicated scholars who like to rub shoulders with celebrities. We wouldn't want Matt Damon or some other Hollywood type to criticize us now, would we? No, we better play it safe and look around for animals that we can see today and throw one or two of them out there for the public to view. And just in case anyone is actually studying this part of Job, we can always claim that the book is poetic. This is accomplished by listing the words of the text in what seems like lines of poetry. In fact, one way to see to it that men do not bother reading the Bible is to list huge globs of text in typeset poem form. A lot of men won't even bother with it. In fact, this poem idea might work on any and all places of biblical text where scholars don't understand the text. They'll just pretend it's a song, not prophecy, or to be taken literal. According to the Bible, he is the chief of the ways of God. If I'm understanding that word chief correctly, I'd say this is one of the biggest animals that ever walked the earth. What possible candidates do we have records of? The biggest thing we can find that ever walked the earth is what's now called the Futalogocasaurus. Now do you see why they quickly call it a hippo? Talk about not wanting to be ridiculed by the world. Deep down, many of them believe that Adam saw big creatures, and later Noah did as well. But try getting them to admit that publicly, and all of a sudden, they get as nervous as a clam at low tide. Here's how the hypocrite can use the footnote to his advantage. The hypocrite has worldly friends over for dinner. His worldly friends bring up the question, "Since you're a Christian, tell me, what's this I hear about the creationists rambling on and on about something called the Behemoth in the book of Job?" The embarrassed Christian pulls out a commentary and shows it to the skeptic, and the skeptic reads in the footnotes that this is possibly an elephant or a hippo. This gets the embarrassed Christian off the hook with his worldly friends. He avoids being laughed at. Later, when this squeamish Christian has his more radical friends over, people like us that defend the Bible, he has the benefit of telling his Bible believer friends not to get mad at the footnotes because, after all, those are just commentary and are not part of the text. Talk about playing it right down the middle. These footnotes allow the embarrassed Christian to do just that. He gets to hang out in both crowds. We used to have a name for people like that. Whatever the behemoth was, it was definitely something that Job could see. Otherwise, why would God tell him to behold the behemoth if Job couldn't behold it? Also, God tells Job that he made the behemoth at the same time that he made mankind. That's a day 6 animal because man was made on day 6. And we can already rule out the ox because he tells us that it has the same kind of dietary habits that the ox has. Thankfully, the ox has already been ruled out. Otherwise, someone would have probably suggested it as a candidate, just as they wrongly suggested it for the unicorn. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. Sounds to me like it would be hard to break the bones of a behemoth. Pictured here are the bones of a large dinosaur. They seem to fit the qualifications of this creature, as they have strong bones like iron and brass. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. This animal does not hurry, nor is he concerned about any predator. Have you ever watched an animal approach a body of water and take a sip of it, but then raise its head real fast and look around? That animal is making sure nothing is sneaking up on it. But the behemoth is so big that it doesn't care. Many times the world will figure things out that a modern scholar has trouble with. For example, notice this movie poster. This movie was made in 1959, and although they combined elements of Leviathan and Behemoth, and made the creature a bit bigger than anything we've ever found, you'll notice that nothing about this monster looks like a hippo or an elephant. Why is it that the world can come closer to the truth more easily sometimes than a modern scholar? Also, please note that this movie was not made by some creationist group or Christian organization. The Futulongacosaurus was found in Argentina. The genus name is derived from the local indigenous language Mapudungun and is pronounced Futulongosaurus, Futa meaning giant and Longo meaning chief. So this kind of animal would be considered the chief, or basically nothing gets bigger on dry land than these types of animals. They've even found a bigger relative of Futulongacosaurus also in Argentina called the Titanosaur. Now we realize that one can't be dogmatic about these things, but we are commanded to study in 2 Timothy 2:15 and put forth a reasonable answer to people that ask us about this subject. Ignoring the tail makes us look dumb in the eyes of a new Christian that is poring over page after page of his Bible, and they won't be satisfied with your footnotes. Even going to the commentaries gives one little satisfaction. Adam Clarke believed it to be a mammoth. He says the tail is bigger than the regular elephant we see today. That's a man trying to come up with an explanation. One look at a mammoth tail tells us that it would be compared to a cheerleader's pom-pom before anyone would mistake it for a cedar tree. Adam Clarke also feels that when the Bible talks about the bones, that this is meaning instead the tusks. His only real good argument is the Bible mentions that his nose breaks through any possible snares. And it is true that an elephant-like creature can use his trunk to break things and even tear up trees. However, we assume that a large sauropod dinosaur would be able to burst through any snares with little difficulty as well, simply by using leverage and pulling a snare straight up into the air. Go ahead, Job. try and lasso him. It wouldn't surprise me if the sauropods were able to use their strength and be the ultimate battering ram. Matthew Henry believes it to be an elephant. Both Clark and Henry can be given a slight pass, as both men seem to try and come up with an answer even after considering other possibilities. However, they both should have simply believed the text as it is. Schofield says it's an elephant, as do many others. When these commentaries are consulted and finally pushed aside, the Bible student will then turn to worldly sources, such as the encyclopedia, and be treated to such gems as this. The behemoth is a mythological beast mentioned in the book of Job, and no modern scholar wants people around him to think that he believes in mythological creatures. They might giggle at the thin-skinned scholar and snicker at him, and that would make the scholar pass out. Whatever the behemoth was, it was very impressive. There's no need to doubt the Bible or shy away from the text. But the critic will continue. They'll say, the word in Hebrew could be translated as all of the animals combined. But it went into great detail about it having a tail like a cedar tree, and bones like iron, and how it likes to be shaded under trees and eats grass. This description doesn't apply to all the animals. A lot of animals are the size of dogs or smaller, so we rely on God's description, and we are on the lookout for something really big. I realize I keep showing this picture a lot, but this is what truly scares the modern scholar. People. The modern scholar wants desperately to be liked by people, and confessing that you believe the Bible even when it goes against modern man's viewpoint of dinosaurs not walking around where Job could see one, that's what the modern scholar wants to avoid. He wants to avoid the discussion on whether or not mankind saw these creatures, because then the modern scholar would be forced to take sides in the argument, and he's much too nervous and limp-wristed to do that. So he continues to hide behind the misleading footnote. But we don't want to end the video on just giving a viewpoint of what the behemoth was in history. So let's get real deep on the subject of what this creature represents. Throughout history, these creatures have been referred to as dragons. And dragons are in the reptile family. And spiritually, there is a creature known as the devil who was also called a dragon. And if you ever want to get real deep on this subject, get out your Bible and read that part again about how Behemoth drinks up a river. And then read Revelation chapter 12. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. So although we can't be dogmatic and declare that the behemoth was a sauropod dinosaur, we do know two things. It was an animal kind that was made on the same day as mankind, and God assumes Job will understand what is being talked about. It's not an elephant, and it's not a hippo.